This is Algebra 2, Lesson 9-5. We're talking about the intro to Amplitude, Midline, and Extrema. Intro because we're talking about the graphs first, and then the next lesson, 9-6, is going to be talking about these same concepts, but from an equation. So let's get started with some vocabulary. A peak. So this is going to be the maximum point, maximum points, plural. And a trough, that's going to be the minimum points. Down here we have a picture where we can actually label our vocabulary. So up here we can see that we have a max. Another name for that is a peak. And down here we have our minimum, our min, or we can say that's our trough. So both a peak and a trough, both the max and the min, another word for those is extrema. Extrema. And you talk about extrema all the time in AP Calculus, so it is a very important word to know. Max and min, they are a type of extrema. All right, midline. As you might guess, the midline down here, and I'm just going to, I guess I can keep red and blue. The midline is this, I can't talk and write at the same time. The midline is this dashed red line that goes through the center. So the way to say midline is it is the line in between the minimum and the maximum. So it is exactly halfway in between, so that's the way that you find it. So if you want to find the midline, you find the distance between the height of the minimum and the height of the max, so distance between 4 and -2. The distance there is 6. You take half of that, and then you'll get 3, and then you just add 3 to -2, or you subtract 3 from 4, and you can get to the midline. So the amplitude is, it's a distance, first of all. So it's distance between the midline and the extrema. Extrema. I cannot spell extrema, which means it's the distance between this midline and the maximum, or the distance between the midline and the minimum. Either direction, it's going to be the same. So I can label that over here. This distance right here, that's going to be the amplitude. So, oh, got some lag there. Amplitude. A key thing is it's exactly half of the total height. So if you want to find amplitude, get the max and minimum heights, the y-coordinates, and then subtract them and then divide by 2 and you'll get the amplitude. Let's look at an example. Example 1, below we have this trig function. It has a max at 2.25, 8.4, and a min at -0.75 and -5.6. So we need to find the midline equation. So to find the midline equation, we need to find the distance between this point and this point. So looking at their y-coordinates, so midline is going to be somewhere around there-ish, I would guess. So I need the y-coordinates here and here. I'm going to do 8.4 minus -5.6. That'll be the total distance in between these 2 points in terms of the up and down direction, in terms of the y direction. So when negative kiss 8.4 and 5.6, that becomes positive, and I'm adding them. 8 plus 5 is 13, 0.4 and 0.6 is another one, so 13 plus 1 is 14, so this turns into 14. So the total distance span between those 2 points is 14. So to get the midpoint, I need to divide this by 2, so I'll get 7. So divide that by 2, so 7 will be the amplitude. And I add the amplitude to 5.6, or I subtract the amplitude from 8.4, and I get 1.4. So subtract, so I'm doing 8.4 minus 7, 8.4, which was the max, minus 7, which was the amplitude. Max minus the amplitude, that will give you 1.4, and that is the midline. So 1.4, so 1 is right about there, so 1.4 is going to be right about there. Let me go ahead and do my best line. It's going to be right about there. And we can see just by eyeballing this that this area right here looks to be the same as that area right there. So eyeballing it, it looks good. Y equals 1.4. That is in fact the equation of the midline. Remember, when you have y equals, that is a horizontal line. X equals is a vertical line, so that makes sense too. Perfect. Let's go to example 2. So we have another trig function, a max at 1.5, 5.6, and a min at negative 4.5, negative 10.4. They're graphed right there. Now we're looking for the amplitude of the function. So it's a little bit easier than this one because we had to find the amplitude in this one to get the midline. This one you just have to find the amplitude. So again, you want to find the distance between this point and this point. So how far did I go in the y direction? If I'm talking about the y direction, I'm talking about the y coordinate. So I need to do 5.6. I usually always do the max minus the min, and that's something I should write here in the side notes. It's usually always going to be max minus the min. If you do that, you'll get a positive number. If you do it the reverse, min minus max, you'll get a negative number. You'll have to take the absolute value or just make sure that it's positive because you're talking about distance here. So when I do that, I have 5.6, bad numbering, minus a negative 10.4. When I do that, negatives are kissing here, so it's going to be positive. 5 plus 10 is 15, but 0.6 and 0.4 are going to make that another 1, so it's going to be 16. This turns into 16 for the total height. So to find amplitude, I just need to take this total height between the 2 points and divide by 2, so the amplitude is going to be 8. And we don't know what our units are, so I'm just going to say units. 8 units, that is our amplitude. That means that the distance from the midline, which I don't know exactly where it was, we could have found it, but the distance between the midline and this minimum, or the distance between the midline and that maximum, was 8 units.